Hello again. I am Chris Lee of Southeastern 14, joined by my partners Max Barr and Blake Lovell. We are here to preview Tennessee's game with St. Peter's, which is Thursday night, 8:20 Central, I believe. Before we get into that one, a reminder, the tournament is here. BetOnline is your bracket headquarters for this season. It has the best bracket contest out there, and odds, lines, and info on every game and every round right up until the national championship. You can access the most up-to-the-minute mobile wagering information anytime from your desktop or mobile devices, even track your bracket real-time all the way through the tournament. Head to BetOnline today and get in on all the action. Remember to use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Gentlemen, last we saw Tennessee. Boy, I don't even know what we were watching. That team had no energy in the second half of its game with Mississippi State, came out flat, paid for it. And then we're sitting here going, okay, does Tennessee get a 1 seed? It did not. So who's it's going to get? It's 15. St. Peter's, which sent panic through part of the fan base because everybody remembers St. Peter's for what it did to Kentucky a couple of years ago. But different coach. And looking through this roster, we'll get to Tennessee in a little bit. I looked at this. And I start looking at shooting, and I'm going, oh, my goodness. This team's got no chance. Effective field goal percentages for the guards. Latrell Reed, 39%. Brett Bland, 42%. Roy Clark, 39%. That's with the value of the three. And, oh, by the way, their starting post shoots 45% on effective field goals. But, and here's the but, they've got a kid named Corey Washington, who when he played was terrific, had a bunch of 20-point games. He is hands down their best player, offensive rating of 122, defensive rating of 95. When he did not play, St. Peter's was 0-6. You can do the math on the record from the rest of the way. The other thing St. Peter's does is slow you down, and it's a really good defensive team, top 80 in KenPom defensive efficiency, which is unusual for a team in that conference. So, does Tennessee have a clear advantage? Yes. Are there some things that are mildly concerning? I would say mildly, in that they gave Tennessee issues when we saw them this year. Yes, but this is still a mismatch on paper, Max.
Battle of the Zieglers. Not really. Zakai's brother is a freshman at St. Peter's. Hasn't played all too much throughout the MAC tournament, but it is cool that they'll both be there. The main thing I'm looking at here is turnovers. And now when you go back to that St. Peter's run, they played, obviously, Kentucky, and then the other big team that they beat was Purdue. They got Murray State in the second round. Kentucky, sub 300 nationally in steal rate. Purdue, sub 350 nationally in steal rate. So while Kentucky and Purdue, obviously, two huge upsets, it was two defenses that would not put much pressure on the St. Peter's guards. Wouldn't make life too uncomfortable for them. They both don't steal the ball. Well, that's not going to be the case this time around. Now they're playing one of the most intense ball pressure perimeter-wise teams in the nation. Top 50 steal rate, first turnover rate and steal rate in the SEC. That's a recipe for what you would like to call like bug squashing, beating a lower team by like 50, what Iowa State did in the whole non-conference. When a mid-major like this is playing up, and now the reason why it's so prominent here is their point guard, Latrell Reed, has a brutal turnover issue. Turnover rate above 20%. He's got 3+ turnovers in 5 straight games. Plays almost all the minutes at the point guard position. So the main thing that's jumping out the page at me is oh my gosh, Tennessee's just going to be able to feast in transition. Jemai Meshack, Ziegler, steals for days. That's what's jumping out at me here.
I got quite a few things, but for starters, let's just say there's one thing that has concerned us for Tennessee is playing a team that will just slow it down to an absolute halt. And you've got that here on the other side with St. Peter's because that's what they will do. which means fewer possessions, which means fewer chances for Dalton Connect to put up 50, all those kind of things. So if you're taking possessions away, then that puts a little bit more pressure on Dalton Connect to be great, and then everybody else around him to also contribute in those kind of things. For the Tennessee fans who are just thinking this is, or not even Tennessee fans, for all the other fans who maybe are just trying to look at this and say, well, St. Peter's right back, same team they were 2 years ago, blah, blah. Let's look at the differences here. I put this out on Twitter, right? So 2022, St. Peter's entered NCAA tournament at 121 in KenPom that year. They're 195 this year. Record similar, 19-11 in 2022, 19-13 this year, so not a lot to read into that. 231st in offensive efficiency in 2022, 305th this year, as you guys have pointed out. Defensively, though, they're still a good defensive team. They were 25th that year where they made the Elite Eight run. This year, they're 76th. Tempo, much slower this year than they were the last time around. They were 247th. Now they're 338th. Experience. That team was 177 in KenPom and experience in 2022. This one is 316. So I think that's something that certainly has to factor in. Also, the conference was better. It ranked 16th that year out of 32 conferences. This year, it ranked 24th. Best regular season win that year, Monmouth, who was 158th in KenPom. This year, best regular season win for St. Peter's, Marist at 209th. So that's their best win in the regular season. And as I noted as well on my comparison, their mascot in 2022 was the Peacocks, and 2024, yep, they are still the Peacocks. So that's the differences, right? And we know that it doesn't really mean anything, but I know there are people who are just losing their minds. And so that's, if you want to look at some of the differences, this team is not as experienced as the one that made the run previously, but they do, again, slow things down a little bit. This is also a team that's worse offensively in terms of the numbers. So those are just a couple different things I think that stand out. But the big thing to me is it's not even really about St. Peter's, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way. It's really about Tennessee. It's really about seeing how they respond from just their worst performance of the season offensively, and knowing that is kind of the monkey on your back, is the fact that you get in these kind of games in March and you cannot score. And we just saw that, and it's like, how do they respond? That's the big question for me in this game.
Let's get to picks, and Blake, you just kind of stole my lead. This is more about Tennessee than it is about St. Peter's. Again, are there things that are problematic? Yes, there are. By the way, all that stuff you read just underscores how unbelievably improbable and out of nowhere what St. Peter's did 2 years ago was, which keep in mind before you bet the house on anything in March Madness. Just, you're forewarned. Crazy stuff happens in March. But tempo stuff aside, matchup stuff aside, let's not forget the Vols didn't play many clunkers this year. They did lose those 3 in a row back in November, but look at who they played. Other than that, they did not lose consecutive games until just what happened coming into this tournament. And so let's go back to Tennessee's clunkers and what happened. Okay, the Mississippi State game, came back and won 4 in a row after that, after losing that one in Starkville. South Carolina got beat at home, came back and beat Kentucky on the road. At Texas A&M game, we're like, what are we watching here? 85-69, A&M looked like an offensive team that we hadn't seen all season. What happens next? They won 7 in a row. Rick Barnes, I think, got this team's attention by benching Dalton Connect in that game for defense. I don't know what these guys needed to hear in their week off, but I would bet you, knowing Rick Barnes and the respect I have for him as a coach, he figured out what they need to hear. I think you will see a fired-up Tennessee team come out. I think there's a better chance that St. Mary's doesn't break 45 points than it does to upset Tennessee. Give me the Vols, and I don't really have to think about it.
St. Peter's.
I
I don't know who St. Mary's. They're not playing the Vols. They may. They could beat. Where are they going to meet? Where would they meet, Max?
St. Mary's isn't beating them either.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Although they could.
That
That would
bold
be
prediction.
interesting.
Wow, bold prediction there. You heard it first. Chris made his prediction if those two teams
If they
play.
do, that's the title game.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think who was it? I think we were talking with someone at the tournament, just saying how Tennessee was just so dejected after that SEC tournament loss. I think the quote from Barnes was marinate. I think that's the word he used. What he was telling his players to do with this feeling, just sit in there and feel it, because you don't want to experience that again, or your season's going to be over. I feel like Tennessee's similar to, I know this isn't Big 12, but similar to Houston, how they got thumped and now they're a 1 seed. I think Tennessee's just going to come out with their hair on fire with a statement to make. I like the turnovers. St. Peter's is not going to be able to take care of the ball against the pressure. And then the last thing I like is Josiah Jordan-James is going to be guarding Corey Washington. So, welcome to physicality right there. Give me Tennessee easily.
Yeah, I think Tennessee, the way they defend, we talked about it all year long. It's just they don't allow you to run anything when they're playing well defensively. Like, they just get you out of your rhythm. They make you uncomfortable, and you're already talking about a team from the numbers that tell us does not love that offensively. Like, they just, they're already a team that does not do a lot of great things offensively, other than what their offensive rebounding numbers are good. But if you're trying to find ways to score against Tennessee, I just feel like this is one of those things where given Tennessee will force some turnovers just by bumping you around, and I think they will throw them. And it is important, like I said earlier, it's important for Tennessee to play this game at the pace they want to play it at. I don't think they need to just let St. Peter's, walk it down the floor and then Tennessee walks it down the floor. I think that's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
So as long as they push the pace here, we can bring up the stat. Rick Barnes is just against the spread. He's just been absolutely atrocious. Against since here's the one from the Action Network, 3-15 against the spread in the NCAA tournament since 2009. But they're a 21.5 point favorite, so he can be 3-16 against the spread and still win this game comfortably. I'm taking the Vols in this one, and like I mentioned, I just think there are some key differences between the St. Peter's team, who did what they did a couple years ago, and the team this year. Not to take anything away from what they've accomplished, but there is a huge difference in experience. There's a huge difference, I think, on the offensive side when Dalton Connect is clicking, and I think that's the difference in this game.
Last little note.
Oh,
go ahead, Max.
You go.
Well, I was going to say, we saw Mississippi State give Tennessee fits by double teaming Dalton Connect, and they did it with a lot of guys who ran around. Cam Matthews, 6'7", DJ Jeffries, 6'8", that kind of long, lean athlete that could really bother you with some length and some physical presence. This is the team that's guards and wings are a little bigger. They're in that 6'3" to 6'7" range. Even Zakai Ziegler got about 5 or 6 inches on his, or Armani Ziegler's got about 5 or 6 inches on his brother. So if in the event that something crazy happened, and again, I like Tennessee without hesitation in this game, but just if something goes wild in this game, that is one thing that I'm keeping an eye on. Is they've got not quite the length that Mississippi State had in physical presence, but they do maybe have a little bit on the perimeter, and we just saw what happened there.
But do they play bully ball?
Well, Max is the authority on that one.
We'll have to consult with the committee on that one.
Oh, I think they do play bully ball. They can't shoot a lick, and they defend.
They're Max's kind of team.
The thing that I wanted to say is everyone in the against the spread numbers are jarring. They are. But everyone stinks in March until they don't. Tony Bennett was terrible in March until he won the national championship. Dan Hurley had never made it past the Sweet 16 until he won the national championship. It happens to everyone, all right? So I don't want to hear all this Rick Barnes this, Rick Barnes that.
Yes, agreed.
Because every coach hasn't won the national championship until they've won it. I mean, obviously, this might be the year. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks for watching us here at Southeastern 14. We're going to predict and preview every single game involving SEC teams in the NCAA tournament. Best way to get those, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. For Max Barr and Blake Lovell, I'm Chris Lee. We are Southeastern 14, presented by Bet Online.